Thank you for everyone who's here. Hopefully everyone's joined in the call. Maybe a few humans might pop in. So hello. Good evening and a warm welcome to AHSS Presents, a conversation with David Blandy, who's over virtually on my right, maybe on your left, depending on, or above or below. My name is Emily and I'm a digital media production lecturer within this faculty. We are extremely excited to have David here with us to talk about the world after art, fantasy and building communities. I'm sure you all have gorgeous, fabulous faces. I've seen a few of them floating around before in the preamble. Please note the session today will be recorded, so if you want to prevent your gorgeous faces from being shared with the world, if you keep your cameras off, you will not feature in the recording of this session. If you ask a question, which we would love you to do, and you're welcome to do so, this will be in the recording. If you do have any questions, please do use the chat function to post your question. At the end of David's talk, I'll dive in with a cheeky couple of questions, and then the floor is yours. As the audience, you'll have the opportunity to ask any questions. So David, over to you.
Good evening. Thank you, Emily, and thank you, ARU, for having me. It's yeah, great to be here and talk about the world after. I thought I would give a little context to where the world after has come from. For the past 20 or so years, I've been making work effectively deconstructing the self, trying to work out what makes me who I am. And a lot of that has been the stuff of popular culture. Seeing the things that are around us that we consume through media as being formative of how we think, how we learn, how we are together. And also seeing a lot of the things that have been thought of as in kind of earlier iterations as this kind of separation between low and high culture, just eradicating that completely and seeing often forms that have been denigrated as effectively folk art, expressions of creativity within different communities. So I'm just going to start my presentation if I can. Okay. Now I can never get this to full screen properly, but I could try. Anyway, can you see that okay, Emily? Yeah, okay. So yeah, my practice started with an analysis of both my relationship to video games, taking backgrounds from video games such as Tekken 2, which I was playing avidly at the time, and turning them into a sort of sublime landscape. And also my relationship to music, looking at my relationship to hip hop and soul music, music from America, music by people of color, and seeing as a white middle class guy from London, what was my relationship to this stuff and why do I love it so much? This strand of my work led on to both my collaborations with the Avenues Youth Project, where we created a dictionary of street talk and a documentary about pirate radio in London, around Northwest London, and also to eventually to collaborations with Larry Achiampong, which I'll talk about later. It also led to a more sustained investigation of my relationship to manga, anime, Japanese culture through the work Child of the Atom, which was a film that I made in 2010, which dealt with my relationship to the Hiroshima bomb. My grandfather was a Japanese prisoner of war, and he always believed that the Hiroshima bomb had saved his life, and thus I owed my life to this horrific event. And the film really was trying to deal with my obviously conflicted feelings about this situation, but also further complicated by the recent birth of my daughter who was 2.5 at the time, features in the film as we walk around Hiroshima as tourists, juxtaposed with these sections of apocalyptic anime from things like Akira, Fist of the North Star, Barefoot Gen, all altered through these extra sections of this extra character, the child of the atom himself, which is essentially a portrait of me with a kind of red cape on, like Tetsuo from Akira. My interest in video games also continued into a couple of works, a work called Backgrounds, which was made with my father. It's that's kind of where I made avatars of both myself and my dad, who's an artist as well. He does pastel drawings of trees and landscapes. And for the project, I asked him to interpret a whole lot of landscapes from the history of fighting video games, the kind of video games that I really became obsessed by at that time. Things like Street Fighter, King of Fighters, Mark of the Wolves, those sort of games. And so he undertook this task, did pastel drawings of many of these landscapes, drawing from kind of still versions. And then we set about a virtual walk. I recorded an interview with him, and we talked about our different approaches to art, our different approaches to appropriation, and yeah, just thoughts around landscape and what it meant to be an artist, really. I followed this up with an actual physical video game, a video game that was played on a large arcade cabinet called Duals and Dualities Battle of the Soul. That's in the kind of bottom center here, where I recreated several of the alter egos that I've been using for my various works. Ever since I started doing these lip sync videos, the videos where I was thinking about soul music and hip hop music, where I was lip syncing to each of these songs in their entirety, taking on each of the verses of the different members of the Wu-Tang Clan in Bring the Ruckus, or completely lip syncing to Syl Johnson's Is It Because I'm Black, which is has a lot of riffs and kind of ad libs, just kind of doing that perfectly in my kitchen. I began to see myself as, in a way, an avatar, a alter ego of sorts, the person who lip syncs to things. So I thought I'd kind of build on this idea of the self as other or mask, or kind of almost like a fictional entity, building in a way on some of the Lacanian theory that I've been thinking about, the self as the fiction. And created a series of alter egos, one of them being the Barefoot Lone Pilgrim, which you can see in the bottom right-hand corner here, looking for the soul of the lakes. That was a barefoot journey between the two record stores, or places that sold records in the Lake District. One of them sold records as kind of rare rock records. It had really nice selection of kind of soul vinyl and yeah, that sort of thing, or for collectors. And then the other record store just sold records in frames as art objects, but it felt like, yeah, they were just kind of just another picture in a way, a place for records to die. So it seemed like quite a kind of fitting journey for this figure. And the Barefoot Lone Pilgrim was followed up with both the Child of the Atom, but also the Orochi Pilgrim, and also the White and Black Minstrel, which was a sort of more theatrical version of my lip sync, where I kind of really enact the white guilt effectively of this act, and the absurdity of my love of this song, the way that that song has become so much a part of me. And all of those were became these characters inside this video game that you could play against each other. And the final character was David Blandy, the weakest character with just a light and a hard punch, made almost impossible to win any battle. But hilariously, when I took it to a group of fighting game specialists, within about half an hour, one of them had found a bug within the game which allowed you to do an infinite, which basically means you can kind of win without the other person being able to do anything about it, with David Blandy, of course. So yeah, that was kind of funny. But yeah, all my, as I was saying, this work led up to a work called Biter, which was me trying to remember all the hip hop that I could in Freud's final consulting room, trying to bring these stories of, I guess, yeah, basically New York inner city life to Freud, the, I guess, original psychoanalyst, trying to bring him stories that he wouldn't have heard before. And it was there when I was screening that work that I first met Larry Achiampong. And we went on to create a whole series of works around our friendship. We grew to know and like each other, both through our shared love of hip hop and video games, but just both as London kids. He's a little bit younger than me. We both went to the Slade. We had a lot in common, but then also, yeah, I'm white middle class guy. He's black lower class, and that creates these tensions. And in a way, the work that we've made has always been trying to examine those tensions, think about them, and expose them. And working with Larry helped me to try and think about how to make work more direct and more open in a way. I think sometimes I tend to move towards things that are more poetic, perhaps. But I think, yeah, the work that we do strikes a good balance between those things. We started off as a hip hop crew, going around different places and recycling rhymes and beats, and then moved on to making a series of works called the Finding Fanon series, which was a search for the lost plays of Frantz Fanon. Frantz Fanon was psychiatrist and theorist, kind of grandfather of post-colonial theory, writing at the time of colonialism about his experience in Martinique and France, and also Algeria. He fought for the revolution in Algeria, died horribly early. And yeah, wrote two really important works, the Black Skin, White Masks and Wretched of the Earth. But he'd also created a whole series of works of fiction, of plays, which when we started the series had become lost. And we wanted to imagine a journey to try and find these lost plays as a way of trying to find some sort of resolution or answer to where we should go from here, with the situation in the world, with the relationship between black and white and yeah, humanity. How do we find a humane way forward? The second of these works, Finding Fanon 2, was made within the Grand Theft Auto video game, a work of machinima, as it's called. And through the construction of that work, we realized that we had a whole set of tools which would enable people to really create their own stories within these spaces. And that led to these, the work FF Gaiden Delete. It was a whole series of FF Gaiden, but this was probably the key work, where we worked with Ministerial Limbo, which is a group of paperless migrants in Oslo. And they told us their stories and created their own avatars within the Grand Theft Auto landscape. And yeah, they would just walk through the landscape and while the voiceover tells their stories of migration, but also stories of just existence within this limbo-like state. And yeah, it's interesting, the kind of dislocation through the virtualization of these characters somehow makes the testimony even more poignant somehow. Yeah, another strand of our work, and both of my own individual work, but also work with Larry, has been working with science and thinking about how these rules and thoughts of how the world is shaped have been quite, yeah, have defined how we all think about ourselves and our place, and how sometimes this separation, this dividing into various strata in order to classify and define, has created some of the issues we have today. I mean, the very construct of human race, for example. And really, it was while I was thinking about these issues of science, I started thinking about science fiction, about how science fiction, oh, wrong slide. Science fiction can give you the opportunity to think about other worlds, other ways of being, other ways of being together. And there's been a strong strand of I guess, humanism throughout my practice. And I think Ursula Le Guin particularly kind of strikes that chord with her works like was the verse, the dispossessed, left hand of darkness, proposing, yeah, different forms of societal model, and also just that simple statement that, you know, in order to change society, you have to imagine a different one first. And this reminded me somehow of my early explorations into Dungeons and Dragons. I bought the red box, as it was called, Dungeons and Dragons Basic, when I was about 11 or 12, I think. Only ever really got to play it a couple of times, but then kind of started getting into lots of miniature games and things, painting miniatures, mostly painting them because I didn't have that many people to play with. Again, I think this was a common problem at the time. But the vivid memories that these images brought up when I reopened the red box about 6 years ago, when a friend of mine had got a kind of a second-hand copy, kind of, yeah, it made me think that maybe this space could be an interesting space to examine potential other worlds and other ways of collaborating together. Could the space of the imagination, the shared space that is created through these games, be a space to explore, like I had explored the virtual space, or the video space, or the space of music. And this led on to the work, The World After, which was a work with focal point and new geographies. And it was a specific reaction to a site, a place called Canby Wick in Essex. And the site was due to be an oil reserve in the early 70s, but the oil crash had happened due to geopolitical events, and it was left to nature for the next 40 years and has become a site of special scientific interest with an incredible plethora of bugs and orchids and all sorts of beautiful natural phenomena. And that tale of rebirth seemed like the perfect scenario for a new game. At the same time, I'd been playing a lot of Dungeons and Dragons both with my friends and also with my children as a way to escape the screen somewhat. And I'd become aware of a lot of the issues that were inherent within it. The idea that you had to choose a race to be a character, that you had to choose an alignment, that you could be good or bad, and somehow rather good or evil, and that, you know, there were all these kind of presuppositions like that white magic was good and black magic was bad, etc., that just seemed so ingrained in the game that it felt like, is there the opportunity to just rebuild this thing, chucking out everything that is problematic, but keeping that kernel of the shared imagination and shared collaborative storytelling, which is at the heart of it. And so I was inspired to make a whole game. So I made collaboratively with a group of role play gamers from the area, from Essex. We set about creating both a setting, but also a way of playing this game. It's a pretty chunky book, but it also accompanied a whole film and installation where you kind of enter into the world of this game, but it's stories from inside this fictional world. I've been playing this game a lot, even more actually since lockdown, as the method of gameplay using just the voice and the imagination suits this sort of Zoom space really well, because you all kind of, you know, you can all interact in the same way, and you can kind of see some of the people playing at the bottom here as part of that was part of a Wising event. But the more I played, the more I thought that the what I'd created was interesting, but maybe a little clunky, and that led me on to the latest iteration, which is Lost Eons, which is the world after taken to the Cambridgeshire Fens. So water level has risen, and most of Cambridge has been flooded, but you're left with this map, and a whole series of different societies have risen up. The conceit of the world after is that 8,000 years ago, due to climate cataclysm, everyone had to escape to vast havens deep underground. And now, at the time of the game, in the far future, you're rising up from your haven and trying to discover what the surface world might entail, what could be up there. And what you discover is there is the threat of colonialism from those who went to Mars back 8,000 years ago. So it's sort of a battle between the post-human and the what's the other one called? Yes, different types of post-humanism. And yeah, it's built into a highly complex array of different societies. There's a plant-based society, the Calyx, who have a kind of subsection called the Corolla, who are full of flowers. You have the Aya, who are the spirits of reincarnated human sea guardians. The Wiccanen, which is a sentient reed bed, which creates a golem that you can play as. It's quite a crazy world, but it's full of mutation and wonder and a kind of fight against corporate fascism, really. So that's the world after and Lost Eons in a nutshell. I think I've gone radically over. So Emily, did you want to ask some questions?
Oh, yes, thank you for that. That's super interesting. I just have a quick peek at the chat. There's no questions in there yet. Whilst I'm asking some questions, please feel free to pop your questions in the chat. Otherwise, I will end up talking forever about my biased interests towards David's work. So the first question I have relates to Lost Eons. And so I'm interested to know, how has working remotely impacted Lost Eons? Are there any new ways of working that you'll carry on as part of participatory practice?
I think, working remotely has allowed, in a way, a much more casual way of working remotely. I mean, working collaboratively, because in previous projects, it had always been, you had a session at a particular time, people came or they didn't, and you shared a physical space, you did the work together, shared ideas, but with the ability to be remote meant that you could be much more flexible with those times. It didn't matter if only one person turned up, maybe, and if 7 people came, that's fine, because there's no problem with room. It's just, it's more people on the screen. So it actually, opened things up quite well. I mean, I don't think I would, given the choice, I wouldn't do it exclusively, but I definitely have it included as part of the project. Just like I'd never really considered playing role-play games kind of remotely before. I didn't really think of that as a kind of a valid substitute for playing in real life, that somehow there was some essential essence that had to be there in person. But actually it does work remarkably well, and I think it can fit into people's quite hectic lives in a more accommodating way. I think it gives it a different accessibility, which I'll definitely keep up with, I think, with future projects.
It's interesting, the improvement in accessibility and how tabletop games seem to have got a bit of a renaissance moment going on with more people playing them. I have got a few other questions, but I have seen Tina's got a question in the chat that is relevant here. Can you talk a bit more about the collaboration with Lost Eons?
Yeah, of course. Sorry, I've rather skimmed over that. I was feeling pressured for time. But with Lost Eons, I was working with Cambridge Biomedical Campus was the starting point, and the idea was to get to work with groups and voices from across that vast space. I mean, there are about, I think, 30,000 people work at Cambridge Biomedical Campus, so it's like a small town, really. And we did various call outs, contacted the hospitals, etc., and worked with people from, it was primarily from like the library, from research units, some patients, but also ended up working with some people from arts courses, and it was a really wide group, and each person sort of, different people had different interests. Like some were really into creating they're called NPCs, non-player characters. So they would describe a whole personality of a person, and we kind of distill that down into like 5 bullet points, so that someone could use that at the table. Another person was just into drawing; they didn't like writing at all. So Jacob, who I've been working with quite a lot, who has done this drawing of the Corolla, who's did the front cover. yeah, seem to get really invested in the world. So it's been yeah, it's been really interesting. I mean, the whole idea of the Wiccanen was just so outside of what I'd ever dreamt up what a character in a game could be. Like having someone coming who isn't really, you know, was more interested in it as, I guess, a writing exercise and an imagination exercise than as a game. And I thought, you know, that's brilliant. That's exactly the kind of collaboration you want to have, because it kind of brings in this completely different idea of what sentience, what consciousness, what society can be. So yeah, it's been really fruitful working with those different groups, and everyone's been really open with their time. I think it gave, you know, it's all happened during this really basically horrific time of Corona, and yeah, it became like a little art club, a kind of a space to reflect, or just have a moment out of kind of the normal life and create something together. And yeah, this world emerged.
Awesome. It's interesting you call it an art club. There's a well-known televised art club by a well-known artist as well. Out and about there also. Tina's got another question going in there. Are there further developments of the world planned?
Yeah, I mean, I've done some brief work with Onca in Brighton, because I mean, I'm based in Brighton now, and I've been working with Onca, who are a gallery that specialise in work around the environment and our relationship to it. And with a group, we've sketched out a couple of societies, a kind of the beginnings of a setting. So I'd really like to kind of enlarge on that. I think, yeah, this one has been quite a major undertaking, because it was sort of rejigging the rules, bringing in ideas around mutation. It's been quite a large rehaul, but the settings are quite kind of not simple, but they're kind of more straightforward to create. That you kind of create a map, you create these different groups that might occupy the surface territory. And again, yeah, it creates a portrait of this particular space, a portrait of how the space sees itself. Yeah, I did another kind of smaller session with a group from Liverpool John Moores University, and that's resulting in something. I'm working with Gabriela de la Puente from White Pube to create a setting for there. So again, very kind of Liverpool specific. It has a very kind of Liverpudlian flavour, let's say. So we're hoping to essentially create a map of Britain through these different sections. But yeah, that'll take some time.
Anyone in the rest of the UK listening, note that down. So I'm gonna, I can't see any other questions, so I'm gonna jump in with another one that relates to a different work, How to Fly. Would you ever set up your own YouTube channel, or other platforms are available, asterisk, or other streaming platforms are available as well? Have you thought of that and the impact of streaming on your practice?
Yeah, I mean, in a funny way, like streaming has been quite influential on my practice, even though I haven't used it that much, because Twitch TV was a place where, which is a streaming platform predominantly for video games. I came across it when I was playing a lot of Street Fighter 4. Got very heavily involved in the Street Fighter 4 community, hoping to put a book together about that community and kind of how that's changed from the 90s to the noughties to the 2010s, kind of arcade culture, etc. And yeah, it got me interested in both the community that's there, this kind of desire to watch other people play games, which has been there since the beginning of time, I think. But like, I remember at the arcades, kind of watching over people's shoulders was almost as interesting as playing yourself. But and also recently I did some streaming with Larry. We did a kind of basically a conversation Q&A while we were playing Splatoon together. So as a kind of a 2-hour thing, and yeah, that was really fun. I mean, Larry's like semi-pro Splatoon player. I'm just a noob, but like I can shoot a paint blaster and kind of have fun. But yeah, it's an interesting kind of, it's very immediate, it's quite disarming, it's yeah, it is an interesting medium. YouTube is funny. Like I've got, I mean, almost all my videos are on Vimeo, which so if anyone wants to look up any of my video works I referenced, then you can go to my website. It's got links to the videos that are all on Vimeo, or you can go direct to Vimeo and just type in David Blandy, and then you get all of them really. But YouTube it's kind of I kind of shied away from it at first because I wasn't quite sure, like this is back in 2005, like ancient times, like because I wasn't sure, like, yeah, what the ownership situation was. Like, did it mean that they then owned your video, which they do effectively, but then also there became the issue of image quality, that the compression that YouTube uses is much harsher than Vimeo. So that's why I plumped for Vimeo in the beginning. But really, the reason that I don't have stuff on YouTube right now is pure laziness. Actually, I should get stuff on there. It just means encoding it again and creating a kind of a profile, and then bunging some stuff up. I think especially the how-to videos fit. They're a reaction to YouTube how-to videos, because I've kind of spent many hours with, I don't know, 12-year-olds and 60-year-olds teaching me how to use Adobe After Effects or something, and that sort of weird semi-intimate relationship that you have with people, it always feels like they're almost talking kind of directly to you, even though it's just, it could have 100,000 views or something. Yeah, it was that voice that really inspired those how-to videos. It's those films are really about that transition from the kind of the improvised, the sort of the colloquial, the informal, of sort of just, hey, I'm just going to tell you how to, don't know, do a 3D render in Blender, and yeah, this is how you make it glow. Yeah, I'll show you how to do the glow effect. And then the kind of the more authoritative voice of almost like, I don't know, and Larry always calls it like the BBC voice and stuff, where you kind of just sort of just change the intonation, and kind of the cosmos is expanding. You just suddenly there's a whole different resonance, and in a way that interest in the voice and the power of the voice was one of the key drivers to being interested in role play games, because it's so much about kind of setting a scene, creating a mood, changing the mood with your voice, and with the way that different people interact with it. So that was, yeah, both those things are kind of, I guess, key influences. But it's funny I haven't done more with YouTube directly, but yeah.
It's interesting how you feel connected. So like when I was learning how to work with VR technology about 10 or so years ago, there was this developer whose voice I was so used to hearing every day, but had no idea what they looked like, which was quite interesting. It's something we've become used to now. Like, you could be working with someone remotely and not recognize them in a room until they speak. But maybe there's a chance with YouTube to do like a remastered or an unmastered, impressions a bit dodgy, a remastered version, unmastered version of some of those videos. So don't be shy, humans, for popping something that you want to ask in the chat. So I've got another question which kind of accidentally links with that. So what are your thoughts on advancements in rendering and image quality? There's always like Ultra HD this, Mega Real, that, Pythons everywhere. Does it make you more nostalgic for older media technologies?
I think it's funny. I don't know if it makes me more nostalgic. I think that nostalgia will always be there for me because they're literally memories. These are games I played and I existed within these spaces at that time when I see the graphics for Elite or something, or the graphics for Super Mario 64. It's like, yeah, they don't match up to today's graphics, but they have a particular time and place, and they work. They still function as a game space. And sometimes there is a kind of a benefit to leaving things to your imagination. I think there's a reason that people like Danielle Braithwaite Shirley are using sort of N64 style graphics for their work. It's not only does it mean that you can almost sketch in that medium, because you're not looking to make the photorealistic thing. You're looking to kind of make the glitchy, kind of scuzzy, buggy version. So it's sort of, yeah, it means you can sketch and it feel less precious about it. It kind of has a rawness to it. I've seen people working in Roblox as well, which has kind of similar possibilities. It's very simple to kind of create stuff really chunky kind of graphics in, but also, yeah, some quite I've seen some screenshots recently of stuff that's really quite interesting and artistic. So I think the Ultra is always going to be interesting. I mean, it's utterly rinsed within art practice, like the upper echelons of art. I don't know, I'm going to be like a football commentator and say, your Ed Atkins, your Ty Sharneys, are using super high res graphics to kind of create that. It's often to create that kind of visceral, almost, pseudo realness of it. And I think it has an interesting place. I think that it really does enter that uncanny valley where you're kind of, is this real or not? It's basically a puppet, but it also feels kind of horribly real somehow. And there's something about just the photorealistic vista, like just a landscape, like totally exploited that in sort of Finding Fanon 2, etc. That is just, it's quasi sublime, these landscapes, these sunsets, and it kind of gets you thinking about what a real experience is, I suppose. But I think the wonderful thing is that there's room for both. The hyper real is interesting, but it doesn't mean that the work done in a kind of really lo-fi way, like Uma Breakdown or someone, is not interesting. It's just as interesting. It's kind of it feels like more like kind of I don't know, work from the id or something. It's like the kind of revealing the kind of the mechanisms that are at play within those coded surfaces. So yeah, it's yeah, I love it all. What can I say?
It's good. Both are still hanging in there. You've got your metahuman Unreal Engine, which looks amazing and scary in my opinion, all at the same time. But you've got Pico 8 and all of the pixels and awesomeness as well. So we've got a couple questions coming. Joe's got on the same wavelength for Joe. That was my next question and last one. What do you think of non-fungible tokens? And thank you for saying what they are, because normally the next bit after you say NFT is to explain what one is to a human.
Well, I don't really think that non-fungible tokens is terribly self-explanatory, but it's basic. Yeah, to anyone who doesn't know, they are effectively turning artworks into a unit of currency. So like a Bitcoin. And my opinion on it is that it just seems terrible. like it's in general, like it's an environmental disaster. And in a way, like, you know, the legacy, the reason that I got into performance art, video art, all these kind of participatory practices was that they're essentially non-commercial platforms, that they're completely unsaleable. Yeah, the odd thing has been sold, but it's not that's not the purpose of them. To turn artworks into almost literally a dollar bill or a token for money, seems to kind of ride against the whole ethos of virtual art, kind of, yeah, art outside of the white cube for since its inception. So yeah, and until I can see any kind of actually kind of real way of offset, I don't know, I hate the idea of environmental offsetting anyway, but you know, some way to create these without burning a huge amount of energy, which is what it requires in order to create a non-fungible token. You know, it can be days, weeks, even months of energy to create one token. I just can't see how I could allow that a place in my practice. But you know, that's my personal opinion. So you know, you do you, Mr. NFT. but yeah, I can't see it. It just seems to go against everything that art is for, really.
So it's a good way to explain it. You do you. Jacob's got a question. Jacob, the same Jacob that you've been working with doing and has done the gorgeous cover art. Do you think Lost Eons would work as an experience within a virtual space?
Oh, totally. I think it could. I have dreams. I think it could work really well, both as like a 16-bit adventure. I mean, partly because I'm just totally in love with like Final Fantasy 6 and 5 and 4, and Chrono Trigger and all of the Squaresoft stuff. And I'd love to kind of make a kind of a tribute to them. And I think it would work really well with those sorts of graphics, just because it would be quite, it'd make it quite possible to make. But at the same time, I think kind of sections of it could work in a kind of more like made with Unreal Engine or something, like as a game space. I think, yeah, it could be really good. I mean, it would require a lot of work in terms of modeling and things, which is why I'm kind of loath to go that way. But at the same time, if the appetite was there, if someone wanted to work with me on that, then we could see what could happen. But I think, yeah, I think it could suit it really well, as maybe like a I don't know, Elder Scrolls type environment. Elder Scrolls meets oh god, like, yeah, kind of post-apocalyptic thing. It could be really cool.
I know Jacob's been playing a lot with 3D modeling and Blender. So Jacob, keep in touch with David. You might make that happen.
Yeah, no, Jacob's been incredible. Yeah, thank you very much, Jacob, for all your work on this project. It's been immense.
I feel a little bit like an auctioneer. We've still got a couple minutes left. This is like your last call for any questions. So, oh wow, like a mega question just dropped in.
Right, Chris Land. Okay, I'll read it out just in case everyone can't read it. Following from Emily's last question, I'm really interested in the sense of nostalgia in the projects you have been discussing, from record shops, vinyl, to old console games and Dungeons and Dragons. How does this nostalgic aesthetic match the futurological imaginaries of sci-fi and the impasse you were discussing about needing to imagine different futures to create something new? Does it sometimes feel today like even the future was better in the past? I think what people gain, I mean, I'm not sure if anyone's aware, but in the role play community, a huge faction of it is old school revival, OSR, or old school revolution, it's sometimes called. That's very much, yeah, it's kind of, there is a nostalgic element, but I think there's also trying to almost work outside of its embeddedness in a kind of a capital, in a brand, in, you know, Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. I haven't talked about that at all in this talk, but it is, you know, it's been integral to the revival of roleplay games over the last 5, 6, 7 years, but along with things like Critical Role. But there's this desire within the community to kind of to rip out those sort of corporate spaces or corporate kind of I don't know, pressures, let's call it, and take it back to something much more collaborative and communal, and I guess raw in a way. And I think that's why Ursula Le Guin has kind of touched such a nerve with people today as well, along with Octavia Butler and theorists like Donna Haraway. They're all kind of looking to these spaces outside of capital. I mean, Ursula Le Guin worked within a capitalist system. She created books for publishers, and they were made, but was always kind of fighting against it from within, I suppose. And I think a socially networked world has really encouraged everyone almost to brand themselves, to become, you know, you see it with certain creators, both in the role play market, but also artists. You know, you become a brand that speaks with almost a corporate voice, even though you're just one person. You know, you become the spokesperson for this particular vision of the world, and that's, you know, that's really, it's really sad, basically, that there's that compulsion to corporatize our own creativity. And I think people are looking to the past, you know, like to, I don't know, shonky sci-fi, or the very, you know, the early days of Dungeons and Dragons, before even the red box, before, you know, the kind of 74 version or whatever, to kind of seek out, you know, what was the essence of this thing? What could this be before that kind of juggernaut of capital got involved, and you were kind of trying to play to the lowest common denominator? And could there be an alternative model there? I don't think it's nostalgia per se. No, I think yes, there is an element of that, but I think it's more searching for something authentic, for something raw. And I think some of the indie games that are coming out now manage to do that quite effectively. Kind of to really have these much more kind of rounded and nuanced ideas around what gameplay can be. I don't know, just thinking of Orbital Cowboy Blues or something like that, or it's they're kind of just coming out of left field, but acknowledging all of these different debates at the same time. And it's an exciting time to be making, I think, because I think we've sort of gone through social media and kind of coming out the other side. You know, it's there, but it's sort of, you know, Facebook sort of like, I don't know, it feels sort of redundant now. Twitter is there as a kind of an interesting sort of conversational tool. Sort of, I find myself a lot on Discord channels. I mean, that's a bit like your experience, Emily, with that developer. There's people in there that I've had really in-depth conversations with, but yeah, all I know them from is kind of their kind of chat emoji. It's like, to meet them in real life would be really, really weird. But and yeah, it's led to some really interesting collaborations, and almost like I don't know, an MA in game theory, just through the kind of reading all these different experts talking about kind of what they're working on currently. So yeah, it's just, the world is incredibly open now, and I think people are looking around for other models. And yeah, some of those models are in the past, but I think they're all looking towards, you know, what is the best present we can make now, and what can we work towards in the future to that really kind of reconfigures the world that we're in.
That seems like a ridiculously awesome way to end. The best present you can make now. And yeah, I did the auctioneer thing. There was no following questions apart from Jacob. It was really great working with you. So I'm not going to do the going once, going twice thing. That's been, we're done. That was awesome. Could chat forever about game theory and indie games being awesome. But thank you everyone who came along to hear David's words of wisdom. And thank you to David. Wouldn't have worked without you for obvious reasons.
Thank you very much, Emily. It's been a pleasure.